tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Do you hear that? Do you? Because that is your life running out of time. Now, I know what you're saying. You're saying, Rut, man, that is one hell of a morbid way to start your podcast. But I'm here to tell you, as a person that has been a slave to time for the better part of the last 20 some odd years, it is a debilitating, excruciating, mind-numbing, life-altering challenge when time controls you like you're a slave. Now, man, that's a harsh thing to begin to think about. But all you actually really have to do is to start to ponder how often you feel as if you're out of time. How often you feel as if, guess what? Time is coming to some kind of place in your life where you no longer have control. Where time essentially has bumped your consciousness out of the way or pushed your control or your positivity off to the side. It's altered your ability to have good relationships. It's strangled your ability to parent. It's disabled your concept of what it means to live your life to the fullest. Now, that's what being a slave to time can look like. Now, I can't tell you how incredibly honored I am to be back here in front of this microphone with you. And this time it's by myself on the Froglogic podcast, episode 27, A Slave to Time. But I am stoked to be back here. And one of the crazy things that we have to begin to understand is that we're all slaves to time in some way, shape, or form. That since the first moment where you were able to look up at that clock in grade school, right? And you were waiting for recess to come, or you were looking at the clock on the wall, waiting for that horrible math class or history class or whatever it might be, or you were waiting for detention to end. That was me on a regular basis. Or you're waiting for some kind of moment that alters your existence, right? The ability to run outside, to get your homework done, to get outside and play. Or the moment where you were engaged in activities with your friends or your family where you forgot that time was even there, that there was no relevant a grip of time or shackle of time in your life, where the days were long, right? And the summers were longer. Those moments where we really began to evaluate the beauty of freedom that we experience in living life to the fullest. Now, those freedoms, they begin to become a little constrained. They start to be reeled in with the amount of requirements or the accountability or the expectations that have been transferred onto us by those that we care deeply for in our lives, our parents, our mentors, our coaches, our loved ones, right? Even our peers at an early age begin to tempt us with time, right? To tempt us with, well, are you getting ready? Do you know what team you want to play on? Do you know what college you want to be with? Hey, are you coming to my house this weekend to only be with me or your first girlfriend or boyfriend? Hey, you got to stop hanging out with those other people. I want your time. Or your parents, have you spent enough time? Have you committed yourself? Are you doing what needs to be done when no one is looking? To spend the extra time in order to really pave the pathway for your own success. Where they started to affiliate, where we started to allow the affiliation of pain to be combined with time. Man, those days became challenging, didn't they? Well, that's what this show is all about. In this show, I'm going to do my best to dissect that whole process. I'm going to do my best to be able to dig into it. I'm going to do my best so you can begin to think about it in a way that is not going to keep you encaged, right? And not in a way that somehow, some way that time, like it has to me, has put these grips on me, right? Mentally, physically, spiritually. And this process, this long, agonizing process I've gone through to have, a little bit better way of managing this. Because I'm telling you, honest to God, man, I don't do it very well. You can just ask my better half. You can ask Jana on how well I am at my perception of time, how much time guilts me, how much time constrains me, how much time makes me chaotic, how much time controls my abstract directions of accomplishment. Man, time really does all these things. Now, again, thank you for coming back. Thank you for participating. Thank you for acknowledging that a little bit of Froglogic in your life is going to do you well, man. I've been at this for quite a bit of time now. I've been at Froglogic since 2006, man, and I've put a lot of time into it. I've invested a lot of time in cultivating the concepts behind Froglogic and how you can better be able to defeat the negative insurgency, or at the very minimum, endure the insurgency, because they're waging war on you day in and day out, right? They're trying to strip you away of your perceptions of time. They're trying to take away your ability to feel a greater sense of freedom. And that's what the insurgency does for us. And I hope you're paying attention to it. I hope you're not like some small granule piece of sand that's in your own prison of hourglass, your own prison like hourglass, and your life is just dripping through those moments, right? The curvature, the imperfections of each granule of sand dripping through, and all of a sudden you just feeling it fade away. I'm never going to get that moment, that second back again. Because that's a brutal way to live. I'm here to tell you. I can speak from experience. Spent many, many years. In fact, still have my moments where I get trapped in that slavery. And it's a very brutal thing. But time is that. I mean, when you start to dig into it and why you think about time, man, the number one essential component of how we evaluate our time is the ability to project into the future, to imagine a point where there is no more time, where you're pushing up daisies, where you're worm food, where you're a fading memory of those who truly cared about you, and those who didn't care about you at all, you faded within seconds, right? And that's what time is. That's what time does. And so I'm here to break that down a little bit for you. All right. So first and foremost, let's just give a quick definition of time to bring us all into one focal point that we can begin to wrap our mind around. And so where do I go? I go to my favorite starting point, not the be all essential all of information, Wikipedia, but listen, there's always a little bit of information we can extrapolate from this, and this puts us in a relative time frame that is unifying in this concept. All right, here you go. Time. All right. For the concepts in physics, see Time in Physics. For magazine, see Time Magazine. For others, see Time Disambiguation. All right, ready? Here we go. Time is the indefinite continued progress of existence and events that occur in an apparently irreversible succession from the past through the present and into the future. Time is a component quality of various measurements used to sequence events, to compare the duration of events or the intervals between them, and to quantify rates of change of quantities in material reality or in the conscious experience. Time is often referred to as the fourth dimension, along with three spatial dimensions. Time has long been an important subject of study in religion, philosophy, and science. But defining it in a manner applicable to all fields without circularity has consistently eluded scholars. Nevertheless, diverse fields such as business, industry, sports, the sciences, and the performing arts all incorporate some notion of time into their respective measuring systems. Hell, I can't even believe they don't have military in there, because military time, as anybody who's ever served knows, is a unique set of measurements that exists, right? In particular in the special operations. I think probably above all others, we look at time as a magnification of our input in training and our output in survivability. And so time plays a massive factor, as I'll delineate here in a little bit about my background and what I experience, right? Time in physics is operationally defined as what a clock reads. See units of time. Time is one of the 7 fundamental physical quantities in both International System of Units and International System of Quantities. Time is used to define other quantities, such as velocity. So defining time in terms of such quantities would result in circularity of definition. An operational definition of time, wherein one says that observing a certain number of repetitions of one or another standard cyclical event, such as a passage of a free swinging pendulum, constitutes one standard unit, such as the second, is highly useful in the conduct of both advanced experiments and everyday affairs to life. To describe observations in an event and a location, position in space, and time are typically noted. All right. Now, here we go. Here's the one that'll blow your mind. The operational definition of time does not address what the fundamental nature of it is. It does not address why events can happen forward and backwards in space. Whereas events only happen in forward progressive time, investigations into the relationship between space and time led physicists to define the space-time continuum, which I love, by the way. General relativity is the primary framework for understanding how space-time works. Though advances in both theoretical and experimental investigations of space-time, it has been shown that time can be distorted, particularly at the edges of black holes. Well, most of us often feel that our life is one continuous black hole, don't we? That inescapable measurement of gravity that pulls us into that negativity that destroys all optimum capability of success. Man, that's brutal. The black hole of our life, right? The black hole of fear, the black hole of bad relationships, the black hole of trauma that we've experienced, man. All relative to the magnitude, the regularity, the consistency or inconsistency of that type of space-time continuum, right? Right? So, one of the things that I always like to do in my life is I like to evaluate how other people think, right? That's what I do. As a person that is constantly studying the human condition, trying to evaluate what enables us to succeed or fail in extreme environments, right? This is what I do for a living, right? This is my job now. This is what I dedicate most of my time to in life. Right? What I always like to do is check out other people, as we all do. I mean, we all like to spend a certain amount of time with coaching or mentors or reading great books or listening to fantastic podcasts or discovering new people in our lives that have a really phenomenal metric or understanding of this concept of time or any other thing for that matter. So one of the things I always like to go back is check out cool quotes or cool ideas. And I went through, today and a few days ago to check out a few good ones. And here's one that I really like by Leo Tolstoy, right? The 2 most powerful warriors are patience and time. Now, as a former warrior, right, now trying to move into a place where I'm a teacher as opposed to carrying the shield every day, when you start to think about patience and time, man, those are 2 words that are often counterintuitive to being a warrior, right? Right? Because when you think about being a warrior, it's about going to battle, right? biding your time before you can essentially be in the fight. Where I think Tolstoy is kind of saying the inverse of that, right? A greater idea about warriors is you should be patient. You should delay as long as humanly possible. You should utilize and capitalize on the moments in between battle in order to best appropriate, right, your greatest perspective or your greatest ability to not have to go to war, man. I mean, that's powerful right there, right? How about this one? Time flies over us, but leaves its shadow behind, by Nathaniel Hawthorne. I love that one, right? To recognize that no matter what, it's always outside of our grasp. We can never truly reach it. And if we continue to chase it and run and try and track it down to grab that time, to pull it in, to control it, all we're ever going to do is be chasing the shadow of something we can't ever control, man. And I just love that. Is very, very powerful, right? And here's another one that really is something that absolutely just gets me, right? Right? To live is so startling, it leaves little time for anything else. Now, that was powerful. That was by Emily Dickinson. And what she essentially is trying to say, as I interpret, is man, when you start to live freely, where you're just really focused on the moment of the experience itself, right? Where you're immersed in the moment of all that is the experience, man, time ceases to fade away. You're not checking your watch on when you have to get to your next appointment. You're not already imagining the forlorn emotional challenge that, oh, this is going to end soon, right? You're really just living in the moment, right? And I just think there's so many incredible, powerful, amazing things, right? And there's so many different ideas. And you can go out there and you can find all these people because we've got the interwebs. And man, there's just so many cool ideas. But the best place to really begin to start is by understanding your own concept of time, by understanding how to dig into your own perceptions, right? The truth of your perceptions, where they originate, where they come from, how they started, how they were shaped based on certain life-altering experiences, or more importantly, how the monotony, right? How the rigor of your everyday life is shaping the construct of how you experience and how you participate in your perception of your own time and the time management, right? Also. Now, as I look back in my life, man, as a kid growing up in Boca Raton, Florida, man, it was incredible. Right? This was a pretty small little sleepy beach town back in the 70s and the 80s. And man, we would get on our bicycles and you'd be gone all day long. I didn't wear a watch. I didn't want to wear a watch, right? The sundial was our watch. As it became getting darker outside, man, that was the time. Or there was so much requirement of social time, right? That was the essence of how we spent our days, was our interaction with one another. And I remember, man, if you weren't outside playing, or I wasn't, riding around the neighborhood, or I wasn't with my friends sitting there, man, I was engaged in something else, and that was sports. From very early on, age 4, I started getting involved in organized sports. And that was really where things began to alter in terms of my perception of time. And it's critical that we understand where it happens, where it begins. Now, it happens biologically, neurologically, right? When we start to be able to have a framework of understanding, right? We've been drilled in. And I think it's also a settling point where our brain is able to relate experience to time, right? How long we're engaged in a particular activity gives you some semblance of what those chunks or blocks of our life are, how they're broken down. In particular, you go to school, you have 6 periods in a day, homeroom, feels like it lasts this time. Man, my favorite, nap time, man. Mr. Luzak's class. Nap time was the essence. I love nap time. And nap time always seemed like the time was longer than every other period of the day. It wasn't, but that's how we perceive it, right? And then it's so funny when we're engaged in those really high emotional, positive moments, we like to stretch time. We want to continue it. We were like, oh no, don't let it be over. And it's kind of this ominous thing in our young adolescent or pre-adolescent lives that, man, these are the best moments. But you can never really conceptualize how powerful those moments are where you're not a slave to time. Now, getting into sports was the moment where it started to change, because now all of a sudden the critical aspect of success is relative to what you can do in 4 quarters. It's what you can do in a particular inning. And you break it down even in an at-bat, right? Or in a series of downs. How much time do you have to do that? And that began to transfer itself into my life in other ways, because sports became the predominant thing that was governing my direction, my education, everything. It was the pinnacle of how I was framing my existence around everybody else. And I'm sure you might have had something similar, right? Whatever it might be. Maybe it was playing an instrument for you, and that's how you gauge time. I mean, think about music. Music is all about time, right? It's all about, right? Your tempo, your beats, how many beats per second, how many beats per minute. Right? How many chords fit into this particular rhythm, right? All time. Time in your sports, time in your music, time with your family. And how many times did you hear, no, you're not going out with your friends. This is family time. Man, we have all of those things. And it was really, it took a while for that grander sense of urgency to evolve. Now, having done enough research nowadays about the way kids are being raised and how they experience life through their perpetual connectivity. I'm not going to say perpetual because there are gaps when they are asleep. They're not feeling that slavery to time, that connectivity, right? When was the last post? I haven't posted in this amount of time. When do I need to post today? Or, I have to get this text. I mean, my favorite slave thing to time nowadays, and I experience it, I think everybody who has a cellular device experiences, as soon as you see that text come through, your brain is immediate going, respond. I didn't respond. I didn't get back to it in 30 seconds, right? Think about that. It's not a healthy existence. So luckily, me growing up, that sense of urgency to be connected to a particular measurement of time, whether it was social time or whether it was success-based time, you had to complete a task within a particular time in order to be successful or fail. Or was it, logging in the hours of progression to finish 3rd grade, to finish 7th grade? Man, time. And then also the other concept of time that was kind of a little distorted up until a particular period was how relationships are formed and what they entail, right? How much work need to go in those relationships, all relative to time. But one thing that was very clear to me by the time I had hit high school was that time was also not only was a sense of governance, but it was also a partner, right? It was something that you couldn't ignore. It was a part of every single day of your life. It was a governing body, but I hadn't become such a slave to it yet, right? But it was there, and it was relevant, right? And that's how we had to experience it. In that way. Well, for me, once my sports life ended in college, where I became ineligible because the time I invested in partying was more time than I invested in any other thing, which ultimately, it began to reshape the long-term trajectory of my life. And that's the thing we don't even understand, right? we don't even understand that when we begin to adapt or concentrate a particular focus on one thing in an exorbitant amount of time, whether it's good or bad or neutral, whatever it might be, it's changing the trajectory of our lives long term. And so we're in this constant battle of trying to understand that space-time continuum. If I spend all my time getting annihilated and partying and trying to pretend I'm a combination of Jim Morrison, Charles Bukowski, and Hunter S. Thompson, man, that potentially could have devastating effects to my future, which it ultimately did, right? I ended up getting kicked off the lacrosse team. I was almost kicked out of school. But man, in that moment, I was able to redirect my focus and to spend some real time on those who spent a great deal amount of time thinking about these ideas. And I remember, one of the most profound people that ever left a mark on me was Descartes, right? Pretty powerful individual trying to figure out his meaning of life and the sheer length of time he committed to that, thinking about those thoughts every day. And I also remember, the other people, even the negative influences still had a positive effect on me in terms of understanding the magnitude of time and effort it took to become great at one particular thing. I mean, Hunter S. Thompson would often write 3-4 letters a day to people in his life or people he had never met. He just wrote these letters every day. He wrote and wrote and wrote. Much less my understanding of artists, right? When you start to look at people like Jackson Pollock or Pablo Picasso, or in particular Pablo Picasso, and you looked at what he was able to do in his lifespan, how many incredible pieces of work he was able to do. And that meant he was spending his time on his craft, on what he loved. So it was in that moment where I began to realize that my time was not well spent lingering or loitering in my depression, or being submerged in these moments where this alternative reality of my life, I was trying to prop it up, constantly, just trying to backfill it over and over and over and over and over again by this concept that, man, I was actually participating. The things that I were doing were promoting a long-term pathway for success for me. And they weren't. It was just destructive. And we don't really understand the level of destruction in terms of how it affects our life in terms of time when we're in that moment, particularly when we're young, man. And if you're young out there and you're wasting your time, right? And don't get me wrong, I think everybody needs to explore a certain level of creativity with their life experiences. You should go out and try new things as long as you're not hurting others, right? As long as you're not intentionally trying to be destructive, right? But I also think that, there is a place where you have to begin to identify downrange, down the line, so to speak, where the impact of what you're doing in the moment right now is going to ultimately either shorten your life for real, or it's going to make living that life much more challenging, because you're just opening yourselves up to some very destructive ways to live physically, mentally, and spiritually. I also begin to think that, the Zulu foxtrot mentality of I don't care, it doesn't matter, man, that actually is going to have a long-term effect on you. You might not feel it now, but it will. Now, thankfully, because of the time and effort I invested in reading a book about Navy SEALs, I was able to come to this magnificent conclusion that I needed to adjust my timeline. I needed to redirect my pathway in life in order to go experience life in a way that was radically different than anything I had ever experienced. And sometimes we need that shakeup. I'm not saying it needs to happen day in and day out, because I just don't believe we can sustain that, right? I don't think we can sustain it physically, the beat downs. I don't think we can sustain it mentally, the change, the constant change, never having consistency. It doesn't allot for the most important things in life, which are relationships. And relationships take a full investment of time. They take a long-term investment. And so in that process, I said, all right, I need to do this, though. I'd been letting the imposing nature of my future to really ground me in a way where I'd become almost granular, like I discussed in the hourglass, right? I wasn't this large mass moving forward with great momentum. I was disintegrating one grain at a time in this excruciating way, and I could feel that. Now, God bless, I dropped out of school and I joined the SEAL teams. Now, what they don't tell you in the fine print or in the in all the different places that you can learn a lot about the SEAL community, what they don't tell you is really the importance of time. They don't, and how they're going to utilize time to literally reprogram you in a way where time will always be present. In a very profound way. I'm not just talking, oh, what time is it? Oh man, I ran late on that one. Or, oh man, I'm 10 minutes late. No big deal. Or you know what? I'll just get to it tomorrow. That kind of mentality does not exist in the special operations world. In particular, at basic underwater demolition SEAL training. And when I got there, I always found it fascinating that nobody is allowed to wear a watch in your BUDS class except for the OIC, the officer in charge of the class. Now, you might think to yourself, wow, that's not a big deal, man. It's actually better for me. But when you're getting pummeled in the ocean and on the beach, and you have an instructor that has identified you as a person that they want to remediate because they acknowledge your desperate grasp or your desperate push to try and speed time up to end your pain, they know how to make that time languish or linger, or they know how to alter your perspective so you think the pain is never going to end. And when you start to think about that, you start to break that down in this really unique way, and you start to think about it in your own life, man, we often are doing that every single day to one another, aren't we? I remember going in and I remember the first soft sand conditioning run, which was preparation for your timed beach runs. And running timed beach runs on the sand can be either awesome if the tide's way out and you have this nice big huge 25 to 50 meter wide space where it's hard packed sand and you can just get going, versus high tide where you're on this incline and you're in, your boot print goes in about 3.5 inches and you're pushing off, and maybe you've already had to do other timed events for the day and you already had a 4-hour beat down session, and maybe you got a little extracurricular activity first thing in the morning or after lunch in the pool. But now you better hit that 32-minute mark or that 28-minute mark, whatever place you are in thing. So time, right? You go on these soft sand conditioning runs. And the one thing as the accordion begins and everybody begins to stretch out and you start to feel the ache and the pain, right? And it doesn't matter. Nobody escapes it. Nobody's in as good a shape as your instructors. And you start to imagine yourself, how much longer are we going? Because they never tell you how long you're going to run. And you don't have a watch, so you don't know. And you're not that good at reading where the sun is in the sky because you're in so much pain and you're just trying to keep up, much less recognizing the very simple fact that if you don't put out a little bit harder, you're going to wind up in the goon squad. Now, I don't know if anybody listening or watching this has ever been in a goon squad before, other than those that know what it is. In particular, I always used to love Marcus's stories about the Goon Squad. It was fantastic to hear his experience and his prolific hate for running. But imagine all of a sudden you're in this desperate attempt just to stay with the pack, and now you become remediated because you can't keep up with the class, and you're now taxing the time of the evolution. So now you're being remediated, or I should say you're being corporally punished for the fact that you don't care about time. And you would hear those. Don't you care about the rest of your class? Don't you care that you can't keep up? Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to make you care about that. I'm going to go hit the surf, go do 100 8 counts, go do air squats, go do duck walks for the next 50 meters or 100 meters, whatever it might be, whatever application of pain they began to apply to tune you up so that you could not escape from the fact that your inability to support the grander collective is going to affect the outcomes as it relates to time. Because what we quickly began to realize is that we live in a world where every single second matters. Now, in buds, as a young college dropout, how could I ever even begin to formulate what that looked like for me, right? There was no way I could do that. There was no way I even began to understand. Well, one of the main portions of my existence there, and now you have to understand, I got there and I had a couple medical roles which were miraculous and I probably didn't deserve, but a couple incredible human beings who saved my career did that for me because they thought my attitude was that one which was supportive and could be a good frogman one day. And so they gave me these additional chances. And so in that time, in preparation for my next class, I maximized my time as much as possible to the point where I, overran or overtrained, got stress fractures. And then I had this time I had double the time to wait for my next class. But in all of those challenges, I began to understand, right, the necessity of awareness, and that every second that you're engaged for another person or an organization, depending upon what the magnitude of that organization's mission is and how everybody, the collective, buys into the culture of that organization, man, time is critical, right? And how you use that time is what bolsters or boosters the ability for that organization to complete its task in the appropriate amount of time. Now, those that chose not to adhere to the time requirements, i.e. not make their timed evolutions, bye-bye. Those that could not make the jump to the grander sense of accountability. They couldn't get their uniforms on in the 2 minutes after you'd get out of the combat training tank that the instructors would give you. An entire class of 100 plus people, you would have 2 minutes to completely get your uniform on, put your boots on, and be standing in formation outside on the street in order for you to get to the next evolution on time, or in our world, early. Because we had a saying in our class that if you're not 10 minutes early, you're 10 minutes late. Just in order to emphasize the magnitude of what that responsibility to time looked like against the expectations of our instructors. Now, this was not just a frivolous expectation. This was an expectation that you should know that has been built on over 70 plus years of training doctrine, operational doctrine, successes and failures, but not just at buds, man, the successes and failures on the battlefield. And this is where this paradigm shift begins to happen in the individual that has willing to submit themselves to this new culture, these new coding that's happening. That time is an essential component of how you evaluate your integrity, how you evaluate your commitment, your accountability. Because if you're not doing that and you're not paying close attention to time, then essentially what you're telling your organization is, hey, fuck you. Your time isn't the time that matters. It's my time and how I'm processing time. Well, I'm here to tell you that that doesn't work. Not in our world. In some ways, it doesn't work in any world. Now, granted, there are a lot looser constrictions, or I should say, a lot looser forms of incarceration than in our world in the SEAL teams. But remember what our mission is, and our mission is to go after the worst people in the world in their backyards and force them to adhere to a clock of mortality. That if they choose not to, then we end their time. That's a powerful thing. But for me, it really didn't. The transition didn't really happen until I went into an experience, or what I call an Uber evolution, where they do everything humanly possible in order to alter perceptions of time in the truest forms, not using any psychedelics or any mind-altering drugs that skew your perceptions or open up certain aspects of your brain that contort your ability to perceive time. Man, this is all done with the positive application of mental and physical pain. And that Uber evolution is Hell Week, right? Where we start on a Sunday afternoon and we don't stop until Friday afternoon. One continuous beatdown. Well, not truly continuous. I mean, we do stop on Thursday morning at the 90 to 96 hour mark. Now think about that. Think about the magnitude of that cognitive disassociation that takes through that massive metric of sleep deprivation, right? I mean, all the experts and all the science show that 24 hours without a sleep, you're essentially drunk, right? Now imagine what you are at 48 hours of no sleep or 72 hours of no sleep. That's why we hallucinate. We struggle trying to process simple information. But the remarkable aspect of all of that, and where you truly begin to realize that an appropriate, a powerful reflection of time, right, comes when you start to recognize that it's not about my sense of time. It's not about me. It's about the man that's next to us. The man that was next to me, that was in the front of my boat, in the back of my boat, that the man that was next to me underneath that log, right? And I was surrounded by some of the greatest men, the greatest warriors this country has ever produced, much greater than me in many, many ways. And it was their sense of commitment to me. That was the time they were investing. They were investing in the time as a boat crew. They were investing in each other by freeing themselves and recognizing that no matter how much anxiety, how much fear flowed through their cognitive process or their emotional ups and downs, all that mattered is that they were going to not quit on the guy that's next to us. There was no time that was going to force them to break. And that Friday would come no matter what. And regardless, we're just going to keep doing whatever it is that the instructors tell us to do in that moment. That became the most important fragment of time that we needed to worry about, period. End of sentence. It was nothing else. It was in the moment that we had to assess. And that's what granted us the freedom to be able to find the strength, to have that true never quit mentality, and to be able to persevere in the most extreme environment imaginable, which is Hell Week from a training perspective. Now, fast forward, you take this wonderful experience and you hopefully grow with it and move into the teams. And then all of a sudden there's a whole nother level of accountability that is layered into that. And, you begin to realize, wow, this is, man, every second matters, not only from a mission orientation, but also from a preparation, what you do when nobody's looking. I mean, and I thought I'd known what that looked like from trying to play collegiate sports, but I wasn't even close, because now all of a sudden the time, your relationship to time is you're wedded to the concept of till death do us part, right? And you're married to this time frame where you're able to execute in such minuscule levels, right? Where every second is relevant. If you're supposed to be on a point where a helicopter is going to pick you up after a hellacious 25-click hump, you'd better be there on time. Or if you are building a breaching charge, right? An explosive charge that you're going to apply and put on a steel frame door or some type of entranceway into a compound that is filled with bad people, and it's your responsibility to appropriately build in the correct fuses or to attach the electrical fuses or putting the whole system together so your breacher can just take it off your back and apply it to the building, and to clack that stuff on in coordination with your snipers and your overflights and all that other stuff. How heavy do you think that time becomes? Because it's still the same construct or measurement of time. It's still a second hand moving around the face of a clock or digitally transferring over. That doesn't change, right? We've accepted that units as the what is going to govern our lives, what is going to hold us hostage, if you will. And so you begin to realize, man, I'm not going to mess with that. I'm not going to, that's something it's almost biblical, man. That's the kind of time that, man, that is something that I need to have a profound, deep respect for. And that's what happens. You go through this remarkable transition process. And I've seen this in all great performers that I've had this incredible opportunity to work with, right? They're dedicated to the time. They're going to put the time in, right? Ahead of their competition, ahead of the challenges around. They're going to put the time in. Because it's funny, man, there's so much information out there now about what it means to perform well. We all know what kind of supplements we need to take. We all know what kind of practice we need to do based on the particular skill set we're trying to form as it relates to the mission at hand. We all get all that, man. There's plenty. There's more information we've ever had in the history of our existence, right? And that's a long time. I mean, we've been at this for quite a while. Our ability to survive, our ability to cultivate societies and civilizations, to work together or to destroy one another in warfare. Man, think about all the time invested in all of that. And so when you get to that place and then you go overseas and you're applying that respect or that consciousness to time, man, it has a lasting effect. And so when I got out of the teams and I went into the civilian world, I moved home, my perception of time was pretty skewed, right? It did not fit, get this, into the hierarchies of time that civilian life had mandated as acceptable, right? People operate on their own construct of time. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all. It's what kind of is a requirement. We all are living our own lives. We're all doing our own things. We're all investing our time in different ways. And so one of the hard parts is as a former operator now in civilian life is recognizing, right, that people's own perception of time does not fall in line with mine. And so my ability to feel a level of disrespect for them not caring about my time went through the roof. And that's a great challenge that we all have if we come from those worlds, right? If we live in a space where we maximize our time, we're always understanding the magnitude of the implied task, that something needs to get done for the greater good. Right? I need to get the laundry done so the kids have their stuff on. I need to make sure I file my taxes on time. I need to make sure that if I had a client reach out, I get to that back to them in an appropriate manner, an appropriate time. I need to invest as much as I can in order to cultivate this new person in my organization. I need to invest the time in them in order to put them in the best probability of success. These are all things we deal with every single day, but some of us have less feeling of that it's critical. That time is a critical aspect of our success, right? And so often we allow that pressure, that time, very naturally, right? Our life ending applies pressure. Getting older, not being physically active applies pressure. Mentally, not being able to be as open to new ideas and things, right? Or even spiritually, not having enough time to work on your faith in yourself and God and your faith in other people, man. And that's a powerful thing to be able to recognize. Now, it took me a long, long, long time to even begin to process all of that, right? And I struggled immensely and still doing, Frank. Now, I've gone through some very significant traumatic events since that moment, including, working again for Blackwater, working for the agency, going through a divorce, having many friends commit suicide or die. The fact that every single day I wake up, man, I feel as I can feel time pulling on me. I can feel that shackle around my ankle, right? Saying, get it done, you're behind, you're letting them down, you're letting your team down, you're letting your kids down, you're letting your family down. Get it done. Man, that's hard, isn't it? That's really hard. It's really hard to recognize that, man, maybe I need to begin to alter my perception of time or alter my sense of accountability to time. Because if everybody else is not adhering or respecting my time, then maybe my perception of time is not the appropriate fashion, and I need to reevaluate. I mean, I need to slow things down. I'm constantly working or interviewing people or hearing people that are saying, hey, be patient. Take your time. This takes a long time to understand, right? How often do we hear that day in and day out? Hey, slow down. Take your time, right? Be patient. It'll come, right? Man, you say that to an operator and it's literally like saying, hey, stop caring. Hey, don't give a fuck anymore. Slow down. It doesn't matter. But that's a lot of it is the truth. You can't force things in this life, right? You can apply force, right, to learn and grow, but you can't force time to speed up. It's going to take the time it's going to take, period. Now, before I get into that, I'm going to take a moment to talk about people that understand time pretty well. And those are my sponsors. First, I want to talk about Onnit, man. I'm so blessed to have this great relationship with Onnit. They've been so wonderful to me over the last few years, especially Aubrey and his confidence in what Froglogic represents in terms of my own unique ability to optimize human performance. And what they've done is they've contributed to my show, and I am happy because the time that I've invested with their products has shown considerable positive effects to me. In particular, gut health, man. I have suffered from gut issues from the time I got out of the SEAL teams. I was once diagnosed with explosive vomiting. I'm not quite sure what that was, but I have some real challenges that I think I picked up from while I was in the teams and all the times I've been overseas, the crazy things I've eaten with my goat gut. And I tell you, finding Total Gut Health by Onnit is a really remarkable way for me to have a better diet, to process my food better, to not have the issues that I typically have had. For me, man, every time I have these wackadoo combos of food, it creates this really painful distension, which leads into a projectile vomiting, which is always lovely for my better half in the middle of the night when I sound like a dying yak vomiting in the bathroom. But since I've implemented Total Gut Health into my regimen of health, my total health, man, it's made a huge impact. And so if you're experiencing any kind of gut deficiency or you're struggling to find the right thing that works, check out Total Gut Health by Onnit. It's a wonderful product. Highly recommend. Just head over to onnit.com and you'll see that. And another one is their cornerstone product, Alpha Brain. Man, I just can't say enough about this memory and focus enhancement. Alpha Brain is a great product that's been around with Onnit for the longest, and it's their number one product out there. And for me, it's one of my number one useful tools in my life in order to stay clear in my perpetual understanding that I'm not adhering to the time I need to get things done. Man, Alpha Brain's able to keep me focused. So I don't allow time to distract me and jump all over the place in particular things. Alpha Brain is a great product. Wake up in the morning and I have my Alpha Brain, my glass of water, all right, and my cup of coffee, man, and that's the way I start my day. And it allows me to have that wonderful cognitive alacrity that enables me to be able to get on and produce a show like this, to be able to share with you all of the concepts that I've seen and experienced in my life over 28 years of really exploring the human condition. Alpha Brain helps me do that. So again, go over to onnit.com and check out Total Gut Health and Alpha Brain. Tell them Froglogic sent you. The other one is Wise Food Company, right? Wise Company. And now they're now called ReadyWise. They had this wonderful rebranding recently, and I highly recommend you to go out and check them out, man. They provide the number one tasting, long-lasting, quality freeze-dried foods in the industry, man. These people are all about understanding the importance of time. And the time reflection they have is, in the future, when you face that next great catastrophe, think about the wildfires in Australia. How many people had to evacuate those wildfires? They were literally doing evacuations on the beach. Well, guess what? Imagine you flee your house with literally, a backpack on your back, your wallet, and your family, right? And you're running someplace. Well, what happens if you don't have a bottle of water and some food, man? You might be facing death. And so what ReadyWise does is they produce this incredible food that has 25-year shelf life, that tastes great, and it's a way that you can be ready for any potential catastrophe. And I'm talking hurricanes, man. I used it this past summer when Dorian hit, wildfires, tornadoes, power outage from massive snowstorms, right? What happens when nobody can resupply the supermarkets, man? If you haven't effectively put the time in your preparation for those particular types of events, then I'll tell you what, that seconds of hunger and that time of your mortality is going to be so poignant that tick on that clock is going to be deafening to you. In particular, as you watch your loved ones, your family members suffer, right, for hours and hours and hours because you weren't prepared to feed them. And that's legit. That is a legit thing that happens all around the world every single day. So go check out ReadyWise, right, at wisefoodstorage.com, ReadyWise, or ReadyWise.com. And go check out the products that they have available, right, from these wonderful, easy-to-store buckets to their fantastic camping meals. They have some of the best camping meals I've ever had in my life, way better than any other meal I've ever tried. And also they have these emergency weekend packs that you have, a 72-hour pack. They've got a 1-month pack. They've got the long-term package. Man, whatever you need in terms of being prepared for that next horrible day where you need to take care of your family, man, go check out ReadyWise. And when you go over there, type in the promo code Froglogic and you'll get 25% off everything they have, man. Everything they got on the website, 25% off. Type in Froglogic. All right, go check them out. And the last one is me and Team Froglogic. As you may or may not know, we are a motivational training and performance company. And my specialty is motivational speaking, as well as performance coaching and my podcast. I've written several books for kids and adults. Right here is the latest one. This is a Doc Frog's anti-bully manual, man, and this is just one of the most proudest accomplishments I have in my life. We developed this, myself and this wonderful graphic artist, Brian Colt, developed this anthropomorphic character, Doc Frog. And in this particular book, Doc has 3 teammates: Wiley Wolf, a former Green Beret; Semper Fido, former Recon Marine; and Hannah Hawk, an Air Force Special Operations and former CIA case officer. And they get together and they combine their incredible life experience in order to teach kids that are being bullied. Now, this number is insane. Over 150 to 160,000 kids stay home every single day from bullying. Think about that. In the modern era, kids get bullied. There's nothing, it's crazy, but it's part of the process. It's what happens to kids. In their process of trying to find their identities, kids end up bullying. And there's some really interesting people out there that have been studying this great stuff for a long, long time. When I was doing the research for the book, I found some wonderful people. There's a professor at UCLA who specializes in bully, this Dutch woman. There's some incredible other people. There's great websites out there. Go check them out. Just type in bullying, and there's so much content you can't even believe it. But what we've decided to do is take a more tactical approach to solving this problem. And what we do is we help the child formulate the best possible plan to essentially put together a great team, and through modern technology, capture the bullying incident, and then be able to put it into a useful report in order to share with parents, school administrators, or God forbid, law enforcement. And this book will show and teach them how to do that. So go over to my website if you're interested in the books. We've got great hats and gear too. We've got 2 PT manual by Doc Frog. I've got my Forging Self-Confidence adult field manual. And if you or your organization are looking for a great motivational speaker that's filled with energy as well as entertaining, I'm your guy. I've been speaking for over 15 years now. And I promise you, I've worked with all the greatest organizations out there. Please check it out. And if you or your team need some absolute performance coaching, I'm also available to do that. Had a great year past year with Green Bay Packers, who just lost in the NFC Championship, as well as Penn State men's lacrosse team, who went to the NCAA Final Four last year. So go to teamfroglogic.com, or you can follow me on all social media sites, Instagram, LinkedIn, at Team Froglogic. LinkedIn's just my name. And on my YouTube channel, David Rutherford, go check it out. I've got a ton of videos there for you to understand and follow. All right. Thank you. Time. Man, the profound nature of time. So one of the things that we really got to help understand is that, in your life now, how are you going to address how much time controls you, right? Now, before we get into that, first what I want you to do is I really want you to do a deep dive introspection. Take a little inventory about yourself and time. I want you to evaluate how much actual time you spend in your life, how you break that time up, your time management, right? Create your little pie chart. How much time do you spend taking care of yourself physically? How much time do you spend on bettering yourself mentally? How much time, here's a little exercise I do with my private coaching clients, if you will. And if you're interested in coaching, reach out on teamfroglogic.com. Let us know. We'll be in touch and we'll tell you how that works. So what I do with my coaching clients is I say, let's look at a week. And you really got to give me a week where you schedule you write down everything you do in detail, Sunday to Sunday. And then what we'll do is we'll come in and we'll take out all sleep, right? And then we'll take out, and this is on a very specific metric or measurement, take out all sleep Sunday through Sunday, take out all bathroom breaks, take out all eating, all time you have invested eating. We'll take out all time that you have at work, right? All time that you have connected, all the time you spend on your device. Take out all meaningful, quality conversations with people you care about. And whatever you got left, that's the time you got to work on this, right? That's the time we have to work on our perceptions, on our understanding of life. And it's not that much. It's this much. I'm here to tell you, I promise you, if you do this exercise, you will be like, holy shit, that is not a lot of time, man. But it's okay. It's enough. And so what you want to do is you want to begin to evaluate those things. But in order to do that, man, you really have to start wrapping your mind around what time actually does to you, right? What it makes you feel. How does it make you anxious? Do you really have anxiety from it? What drives the anxiety? Is it social anxiety, or is it just the fear of failure, man? That's one of the number one things that I face on a regular basis when I'm coaching or instructing or teaching the lessons from Froglogic, man, is people have this profound fear of failure that somehow, some way they're going to let someone, or most importantly themselves, down because they didn't get it done in time. They didn't invest enough time. They didn't have, it was the wrong timing, man. I hear that all the time. I was the wrong timing. I was late. I was early. I was delayed. I didn't get it out in time. Or I didn't spend enough time in it. Man, these are all concepts that we have to evaluate in real time in order for us to begin to alter our perception of time. Now, I know what you're thinking. I know you're thinking, man, this is a very difficult thing. It's very challenging and complex to process, but it really isn't that difficult, right? Unless you want to start getting into the quantum nature of things and starting to go into space-time continuum in the universe and all that. But I highly don't get there yet, right? Let's just start with you, right? What are the things that give you anxiety? I don't spend enough time with my children. Right? For me, I'm on the road all the time. I'm constantly traveling to give speeches around the country. I'm constantly recording and editing new shoes. I'm coming up with content. And so I have this profound fear that I'm somehow not engaging, not giving my children enough time, most specifically individually. Or I'm not giving the people I love most, I'm not giving Jana enough individual time together because of the craziness of our lives, right? We're constantly going from one time commitment to another, whether it's soccer practice or having seen my family or her family or having dinner with my folks or whatever, or getting time for ourselves, going on date night, man, time. How does that affect you? Or how much time do you actually invest in making yourself better? Or at work, how much time are you actually investing in pushing your abilities forward or growing or maturing? Because so often what happens is we don't have a very good understanding, much like it's often we don't have a very good understanding, much like fear. We don't really understand our fears in its totality. We don't understand time and how it affects us. We know it's there. We know it's present because it's perpetually in our lives. Like right now, I'm looking down at my clock on my computer and saying, how much time have I put in? And have I gone too long? Have I mastered it? But my notes are saying, no, there's more you need to invest in this, right? And so we're always doing this back and forth. So one of the ways that we can better have you really begin to evaluate is what I want you to do when you go through this process and you start to, let's say you do the timeline, right? And you start to evaluate that process, or you start to evaluate what time looks like in your life. Here's what you got to do. You got to set a specific time for that. I know that sounds weird, but it's what we have to do. You have to block out a chunk of time that you are going to dedicate to that function. Now, how else can you do it, man? Just go online and do some research on time. Go find a book about time, right? Go read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. That'll give you one hell of an influence and in such a level of respect for his perception of time that it could ultimately change your life forever. Walt Whitman, Leaves of Grass is another one. And I look up in my library above me. Hell, The Little Engine That Could. To round it out for you. Man, start doing the research, right? This is something that from the dawn of time, the dawn of our time, the dawn of our understanding, where we first had the opportunity to become philosophical about what time meant, man, people have been writing this stuff down or evaluating. And if that's not your gig or your thing, then man, don't be afraid. Go have a conversation with somebody that you respect or somebody that is an influence in your life that can help you wrap your mind around time in a much more efficient and genuine manner. Because I promise you, if you do that, then your ability to understand the power that time has over you will be much better. And then by doing that, you will be setting yourself up to then regain some of that freedom back that you so desperately are looking for. Because I'm right there with you, man. Trying to be in that space where I'm at the beach with my children and my fiance, and to where I just say to myself, relax, just stop. Just listen to the ocean. Listen to their laughter. Just get on that paddleboard. Just hear the ripple of the waves and feel the caress of that wind. And to recognize that you're still here. You're still above dirt. And that you've got time. I hope that got you started. I hope that helped, because I know I spent a lot of time thinking about this. And so what I'm going to do for the next one, and I'm going to wait a little while you process this, and the next show, what we're going to have is we're going to talk about the freedom of time and how to obtain that physically, mentally, and spiritually, emotionally, because that is really where you can begin to start applying Froglogic to where you can start living your life to its fullest. Thank you so much. I'm so blessed to have had the opportunity to share with you my ideas. I'm blessed to have the people I have in my life, my family, my friends, my children. I'm so blessed to have God and the understanding of God, and especially Christ and Christ's commitment to time, and how he helps us understand that eternity is a place where we're really going to get to maximize our performance. And this is just a precursor to that, to ease our sense of suffering while we're here in order to prepare us for the great next endeavor in the afterlife. Man, thank you for that. It helps me certainly. And also to thank all the other people that have formulated my construct of time, all my instructors, all my experiences serving the country, my experiences as a father and as a business owner. Man, it's just time. Trying to understand and making sure that you're respectful of it. Mostly respectful of others, but in terms being respectful of your own time and what you're willing to commit to better understand how to unlock the bondage, how to free yourself from those chains of time, and to become a person that can live in the moment, have great consciousness and great intent, and so you're free and you're no longer a slave of time. Hoo-yah. God bless. Thank you.